Paging Student Doctor.
Hey guys, this is Zenobia Tucker from MAOP's Young Physicians Network podcast, The Guide to DOing Medical School. See what we did there? Today, I'm going to talk to you about mental health and how it is so important to maintain while going through not only medical school, but also as a resident and a future physician. We have a lot of fun tips and tricks on sustainable lifestyle choices you can make to ensure good mental health and advice on how to make those lifestyle changes if you haven't already started them. We will also talk about how caring for your mental health will carry over into being a physician and just how important it is to take care of yourself and your fellow medical colleagues on this super rewarding but also very challenging and sometimes stressful road. So thanks for listening. And to start off, I'll talk a little bit about myself. I am a third-year medical student from KCU Joplin, which, though it is in no way associated with this podcast, is indeed where I am gaining my medical education right now. And today I'm going to be joined by Amy Chenoweth. She is a licensed professional counselor and licensed clinical social worker from Springfield, Missouri, who not only works in private practice in Springfield, but also teaches at Missouri State University. She and I recorded the conversation over a call due to quite the winter storm that I'm sure everybody in Missouri experienced this past February, just a month ago. So I'm going to hop on over to our phone call. So the audio is going to change a little bit. Bear with me on that. But here is Amy Chenoweth, who is going to introduce herself, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about mental health.
Hey, everybody. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Amy, before we talk about tips and tricks to maintain good mental health while in medical school, can you go ahead and talk a little bit more about exactly what it is you do in private practice, as a teacher, and just overall what your experience has been in mental health?
Sure. So I work currently in private practice with adolescents, young adults, and adults who are working on various types of trauma, anxiety, chronic stress, and burnout. Some of that work includes working with folks who are in the medical profession in a variety of roles, who are dealing with stress and trauma, some of which started during the COVID years and some of which didn't. But we meet weekly or every other week or once a month or PRN to deal with those issues that come up to try to keep folks in the profession for as long as they choose to be.
That's awesome. Well, then it sounds like you are a great person for us to hear from about how to maintain good mental health. First of all, what are your thoughts on the importance of mental health for students and for professionals?
I think it is essential. It's kind of it's a foundation. It's sort of like if you were building a house, you want to have a really strong foundation so that what you put on top of that house, the things that you learn, can be strong and stable and withstand, winds and storms and whatnot that will come with the work that you do. You want that foundation to last you and be things that you can carry with you through the course of your career. And hopefully, if you have a good foundation of mental health, those are also things you can share with your patients and colleagues throughout your career as well.
Absolutely. I love that idea of it being a house and a foundation that you build upon, because just like I kind of talked about at the beginning of this conversation, medical school is such a long It's a long haul. I mean, you're in school for 4 years. It's a long haul even before you get there. I mean, students have to spend a lot of time in undergrad or maybe even graduate programs to get them into medical school. If you have to work in a medical field to get experience in medicine. So it's such a long time to devote yourself. And it's people that are really committed and are really high achievers that are the ones that are doing this. High achievers, as far as I know, can also be the people that don't take really great care of their mental health sometimes, and they can be hard on themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you get to a point, perhaps in your training or early in your profession, where some people don't feel safe saying to their mentors or their supervisors or maybe even their peers, hey, I'm not doing so well. help me with X, or do you know where I can go get help for Y? I'm hoping that that sort of stigma is fading away, but that's not necessarily true. And that's something that we really need to focus on, both as mental health professionals and as medical professionals, that it becomes more acceptable to say early and often, I need to get help with X, or please give me some space to do Y, to get myself back on track, to focus on that foundation.
Yeah. When we started medical school, we had like an orientation, and we talked about the fact that it was going to be hard for a lot of people to be able to sustain themselves through med school, because it's hard. I mean, I talk about this all the time. You know, medical school has always been 4 years, right? It's 2 years of classroom and it's 2 years of rotation in a clinical setting. And that's what it's been for decades. But I don't know, Amy, you're in, the healthcare world. Have we maybe gained some more information during these, many, many decades since medical school started? But the amount of time that we have to learn all this new information, all this new research, new medications, new therapies, et cetera, do we have more time to learn those things?
That's not been my understanding.
Oh, so, I mean, I have people ask me all the time, is medical school hard? And I'm like, yeah, I would say medical school is hard, but it doesn't even feel like school to me. It feels like professional cramming. It feels like I am spending all my time trying to mush all this information into my head and making up these weird mnemonics that don't make sense to anybody else except me and my study buddies. And it's a lot. So for me, it was really important as a student to try to maintain my mental health, because for me personally, if I am stressed or anxious, I'm not going to get that information into my head when I'm studying. I'm not going to be able to use it on an exam if I was, at a really anxious place while I was trying to actually learn the material. So a lot of the stuff that I did to help maintain my mental health was, if I hit a point where, I put in X number of hours during the day to try to learn the information, and I'm hitting a wall. For me, it was really helpful to get up and go for a jog outside, just for like 20 minutes. And I would come back and I would feel this like amazing new ability to sit down, have a good feeling overwhelm me, and be able to kind of go through that material again with kind of like a freshened perspective, and like my brain kind of seems to work better. In your experience as a mental health care professional, do you think that exercise, doing little things like that for yourself, can help maintain your mental health?
Yes, exercise is certainly one thing that can be very helpful for people, just to get your body moving and whatever that might look like. So for you, it's running or jogging. For somebody else, it might be just getting up from a seated position and walking around their space for, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You have to start where you are and build it up from there. I'm a big fan of setting a timer and starting with whatever is going to be successful for you. So if someone is not doing any exercise and they're studying all the time, then we need to start with 5 minutes and start bumping it up to 20 minutes. I think 20 minutes is a really good marker. I feel the same way about napping. For some people, they go, and sleep is gone.
Yeah.
So we want to aim for a good night's sleep, and taking a 20-minute nap, just to kind of get the brain a little bit of, time away, can be helpful. There's certain periods of time for napping that is not helpful. And we can talk about that another time, but just aim for, a 20-minute nap, and then go back at it can be helpful as well.
Yeah.
So those are two things that people can do. I also want to encourage folks to do things that help you focus on breathing. My experience is that when people get anxious or get overly hyper-focused on something, they lose track of their breath. So doing simple breathing techniques like box breathing or square breathing, you can call it either one. The Navy SEALs do this when they prepare for heavy activities.
Okay.
And essentially, you're just breathing to a count of 4, ideally. And you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and rest for 4. And then try to do that 4 times to start with. And just focus on the breath. So it's making 4 boxes with your breath.
Okay.
And it can be very calming. The Navy SEALs, I think, do that for up to 30 minutes to get themselves ready to dive into a deep, dark pool for, I don't even know how long. It's scary to think about.
Yeah.
But it can be very calming, and you can do that as you prepare for an exam or doing an intervention or a procedure. And it can really help oxygenate your blood and get you calmed down. For me, it prevents me jumping out at a red light when, people are acting stupid. It's a calming breath work activity.
I think we've all been there.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So I think you touched on something that's really important. These are tips that you can use in medical school, but also just in general. I mean, going throughout your day, whenever you have something that's stressful that's come up. But I just want to go back. You just gave so much wonderful information about things that you can do to maintain your mental health. One of the things that you talked about was napping, getting quality sleep. So I actually did a bunch of research before we met for this podcast, and napping is one of the things that I think is super interesting. So my fiance is a big napper. For when he is studying, he likes to, just like you said, he likes to set a timer and then he will take a break and he will nap. And I'm not a big napper personally. I'm more of, I like to sleep through the night. And if I do take naps during the day, I'm worried it's going to throw off my sleep. And I think that does happen for some people, especially if you're sleeping for 3 hours. But it sounds like you're saying do short naps, right?
Yes. My understanding from the research, and it's very interesting to me, is that you can sleep too much and throw off your REM sleep. And that's not helpful. REM sleep is really important for memory and kind of washing the brain. It's kind of like doing a Control-Alt-Delete for your brain. And if you get somewhere sort of in between that little brief, what we used to call a power nap, and a full sort of 90-minute REM cycle sleep, that can cause you to wake up feeling groggy and grumpy. And so you sort of have to do one or the other, is my understanding of the sleep research. So most people don't have 90 minutes to just stop studying for a big exam or prepping for, the next big procedure. But a 20-minute nap or a 40-minute carve out to get to sleep and then wake back up and have a quick coffee or whatever to get back in the groove is more appropriate. There's so much research around that. And in Japan, they have special, napping pillows that people put on their desks. They encourage folks to take, these brief naps to get them back focused.
So my fiance is also a medical student. Like I was saying, he's a big napper. And some of the research that we came up with when we were getting into one of our debates about napping, it can actually help solidify information in your brain that you've been studying. So that's like he naps, which that's such a fun little cheat code, maybe even as a student, to know that you can take a nap, which will give you a little bit of rest. It's also a break from studying, but it's also helping cement all that information into your head that you have been working on cramming into your brain for the next exam. It's pretty cool.
That's absolutely true. That's really true. When my son was studying for big exams, he would study right before he went to sleep. Because just based on that research. And it seems to bear out. I mean, and why not? You're tired, you study whatever and go to sleep. There doesn't seem to be any research that goes along with the idea of like running an audio tape while you're sleeping. Like that doesn't work. That just messes up your sleep. So don't do that.
Yeah.
So.
No, let's not do that. But yeah, I think the napping is a good idea. That's crazy to hear about the pillows and but I mean, that makes sense. They're really big on productivity. So if they figured out to improve productivity,
Yes. And there are some schools in the United States where they have nap rooms for their high school students because schools don't allow kids to get enough sleep. Their bus routes are so messed up. So they're allowing students to voluntarily go take a nap during the day.
Yeah.
Which I also think is amazing.
Yeah.
So just information for you when you're working with teenage patients, they need sleep.
Yes. Also a great point to bring back up. This information is great for medical students, but it's also great to be able to talk to our future patients. I've just finished my psych rotation and I absolutely loved psych. And I had so many students in their adolescence that would be really stressed about school. And a lot of times they weren't sleeping great. They weren't getting their 8 or 9 hours of sleep per night that they need. One of the things I really noticed was they would spend a lot of time on their phones before they went to sleep or looking at a screen. One of the things that I like to talk to them about was trying to reduce the amount of screen time they spent on their phone right before they went to sleep. And, it's interesting as students, I spend all my time looking at an iPad now to study. And I think a really good thing to do to try to be able to marry both of these ideas, which is studying before you sleep, to get that information in your head and kind of have your brain like pack it away for you. But maybe doing something with like a textbook. Not a lot have textbooks anymore, but we do have First Aid, which is a book that we use to prep for boards. We use that for our first boards exam, our second boards exam. I also think it's a good idea to just get paper and write things down. That's also a great way to cement stuff into your head and not be looking at a screen right before we go to sleep. What are your thoughts on the screen time before sleeping?
Yeah, I think that's really smart. What I've been reading is trying to get at least 30 minutes between a screen and sleep and more if you can do it. Even if that's just, taking a shower or taking your notes or doing some journaling or scribbling in a notebook, something that keeps your eyes away from the blue light screen thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's very smart. And I think we tell other people to do all of these great things that we have such a hard time doing ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. I keep talking about my own experience in medical school, but I have so many friends that do not follow the advice that they're probably giving their patients, and it's and it's not even just, screen time before we go to sleep, but it's also they're not exercising like they should to help maintain their mental health. They're not eating like they should to help maintain their mental health. And another one of the things that I talk to my patients a lot about when I was on my psych rotation was the effects that healthy eating and exercise can have over your brain chemistry. So especially exercise, you can actually have similar effects over your brain as taking an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety. It's a great way to bring serotonin, all those endorphins into your brain in a natural way. And one of the other things I like to talk about with my patients is how much healthy eating can have an impact as well. And I don't know if you know anything about this, Amy, but I'm a huge fan of the microbiome. I think it's kind of like the Wild West of medicine. It's this whole new frontier that we're just learning about. The fact that we are full of all this bacteria in our stomach and our intestines, and that it actually has a huge role over not only our digestive health, but our mood as well. One of the articles that I came across when I was doing the research for this podcast is that 90% of the serotonin that our brain uses is actually made by the bacteria in our gut. The fecal transplants are this kind of new thing that people are doing to help reduce C. diff, which is a bacterial infection. And that has a really high success rate for getting rid of C. diff infections in patients. But what they've also been noticing in these patients is some of them develop depression afterwards when they have received a fecal transplant from somebody else and they never had the depression before. And so the theory is perhaps these patients that donated the fecal sample had depression, and that's because of whatever combination of bacteria they have in their body. And when they give that to the next person, they also develop depression, and it's probably due to that bacterial transfer. So do you know anything about how healthy eating can impact one's own mental health? Did you know anything about the microbiome and how it can affect your mood?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense when you describe it scientifically. I do know mental health people have been talking about that for a really long time. The gut-brain connection. And it's so important when, we're talking with folks who will say, my belly hurts, or I have butterflies in my stomach, or little kids who complain of stomach aches, and the school nurse just says, well, go back to class, or whatever, and we think that it's, or we say, oh, it's attention seeking. Well, no, it's probably not. It may be anxiety or depression, and it's manifesting through the gut.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's super important, and to pay attention to what sort of nutrition helps, what sort of foods exacerbate that, because my experience is anyway that it's different from person to person. I have a lot of clients that really want to try to feel better. Not everybody, because getting better is scary, for folks that really want to try, and they'll make those changes. And again, sort of to go back to what I said when we first started talking, making changes, for those changes to be successful, they usually have to be incremental. Making big change is scary and typically doesn't stick.
Yeah.
So starting with small changes like adding breathing, or adding this dietary change, or starting to exercise for 5 minutes if you haven't done it before. Those things tend to be easier for folks to follow through, including the professional,
Yeah.
If we tell somebody, well, take a nap every day for the rest of your life, they're going to be like, no.
Right.
But if we say, hey, try that for a week and then let me know if you notice a difference, that feels a little more achievable. And you might be able to then make a change if that doesn't work, or if it does work, how do we implement that so that you can stick with it? We need to develop some awareness, both for the person who's making the change and the person who's helping with the change, whether it's us as professionals or even if it's just in your friend group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you touched on something that I think is super important point for a student to be aware of, but also a healthcare professional to be aware of, which is that change is scary, change is hard, and doing it in a way that feels manageable and sustainable to whoever is making those changes is so important. If I have a patient come in that says, they only eat fast food for every meal, and they kind of like apples, but they don't really like to add it into their diet. If I say, well, you know what, you have to go home and you have to just only eat fruits and vegetables and whole grains for every single meal, and you have to start today, nobody's going to do that, right? Yeah. But if you say like, hey, I get it. A lot of people like fast food. There are really great ways that you can find healthier things on the menu at those places that you already like to eat at, or, instead of having, I don't know, like peanut butter crackers as your snack, try getting cereal and peanut butter to add as your snack. So making those little changes for yourself or for your patients as well are things that you'll be able to do for a longer period of time instead of, it's kind of like crash diets, right? If people decide like, oh, I'm going to be really healthy and I'm going to really cut out carbs, you can do that for maybe a week or two, but then you're going to have some stressful thing come up, and man, I really just want to have a bowl of ice cream, or I really want to just grab a bag of potato chips. You're probably going to do that, and then you're going to slip back into what you're doing before. So exactly like you were saying, Amy, small changes that are manageable within your own life are the ones that you can actually stick with, especially with diet. I think having in moderation, having lots of the things that you like, maybe the things that are less healthy have less of that, but expecting that everybody's going to change overnight and really dramatically is just not feasible, right? And we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, but also our patients. And that's really the best way to do it. That's kind of what I'm learning from you, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think one other thing I might just kind of toss in there is one thing I've noticed about the medical professionals and students that I work with that are younger, 40 and less, let's say, is that you all tend to have a fairly strong friend group, whether it's one or two friends or 4 or 5 friends. If you can maintain a group of friends that provide some level of support, even if it's, we go to the movies once a month or we sit around and have dinner once a month, whatever, having that sort of connection in your life and maintaining that, even when you get out of school, is very important to maintaining balance.
Yeah.
So balance and connections are super important to decreasing stress or helping you maintain that stress work for each other. And so even if it's you get together once a month or once every other month and, just sit around the campfire and talk to each other.
Yeah.
But maintaining those connections, and friend groups look different. So again, it may be 1 or 2 people. A friend group doesn't have to be 15 people.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like my friends that I have in med school, we've all been through the trenches together, right? Like med school is really unique in that we are all going through the same program at the exact same time. It's not undergrad where I'm in my biochem major, but I'm really good friends with my friend who's an art major and we don't have any of the same classes. So we don't know what it's like. But in medical school, it's a really unique thing where we're all just trying to get through each week together in whatever, way we can. And we really need that trivia night at the pub down the road once a week to feel like people again. And maintaining those friendships outside of med school, you get to hang on to those memories, know that you were there for each other during that time, and they're people that you can rely on to help you through whatever those next stages are going to be as a doctor, which is also stressful.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I mean, I run into people I went to grad school with, and that was, I don't know, centuries ago. And I may see them once a year, and it's like, oh my God, do you remember the time Bradshaw did blah, 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 or whatever. And, it's like it happened yesterday when you see those people again. Yeah. And it's so important to have those shared experiences to just validate your reality that that was the small slice of hell that we survived. Yeah. And, it's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, being a doctor is also going to be stressful. So it's important to have those people around you that you can call up and say, hey, I'm dealing with this patient. It's difficult. And, what are your thoughts on it? Also, do you want to maybe hit up trivia again this week like old times so that we can remind each other that we're also people, not just doctors?
Exactly. That's really important because truly when you are working in the medical profession, the clinical mental health profession, whatever, you don't have a lot of places and spaces where you can just go say, hey, let me tell you about my day.
Yeah.
Because folks don't want to hear it, and 2, can't hear it. And 3, we can't talk about it, like they'll come and take us away. So, it's important to have folks that just understand that shared experience.
Right. So just to kind of round this conversation out, I wanted to get a little bit more of your perspective on this. Is kind of a nice segue because we're talking about the importance of maintaining these friendships outside of medical school, but also into being the professional doctor or healthcare professional that we're going to be. And that's also really stressful. Before we chatted in the podcast, Amy, you were telling me about how physician burnout rate is really high, physician suicide rate is really high. And so to me, it sounds like all the stuff we're talking about, exercise, eating well, breathing exercises, mindfulness, maintaining socialization is super important to maintaining your mental health, not only in med school, but as a doctor. Can you talk a little bit more about the physician burnout rate, physician suicide rate, and what is being done to hopefully counteract that?
Yes. What I am learning over the course of my work and research is that the physician burnout rate is very high, and the comfort level of physicians talking about that has historically been very low. So that contributes, along with a variety of other factors, of course, for the suicide rate for physicians being very high. It's the second highest profession in terms of suicide rate.
Wow.
Yes. Wow is right. I will send you the link, but I want to give you the phone number here.
Yeah.
For the physician support line.
Okay.
It's 1-888 409 0141. 409 0141. And this is confidential, anonymous. It's not connected to any medical professional thing, whatever.
You don't call in for calling them.
Yes, exactly. You don't need an appointment. You can call at any time. You don't have to be in a crisis. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 to midnight Eastern time.
Awesome.
Except for federal holidays, which is random. They also have a website. I think that's really important for all of you to have access to, because I think part of the fear in terms of getting help is that your fear of that it's going to prevent you from checking some boxes on your applications or your testing. Have you had a mental health issue or a recovery issue? So this is not going to be reported to anyone, and you can, talk about what's going on. You can always call 988. But as you know, that is typically routed to regional providers because most folks want that kind of local help. If you're a veteran and you call 988, you want to push 1 so you can get directly linked to another veteran. I also want to tell you about a program called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer. That's a great training resource for anyone, whether you're a physician or a Starbucks barista, that helps you learn how to talk to someone if you're worried that they may be thinking about suicide.
Okay.
So, Zenobia, if you were worried that one of your friends, fellow students, one of your, parents, buddies, uncles, aunts, whatever, was thinking about suicide, it teaches you a very simple 3-step way of asking and helping someone get help. They equate it to CPR for mental health.
Nice. Okay.
So it's QPR. Yeah. It's a super easy program. I'm going to send you the link. And you can take their training online. It's a very quick online program. I think it takes less than an hour really to take the online training. It's $39 or $29. I don't know. It's cheap.
Yeah.
People can also come to your group and provide that training for you in person. I'm one of those people. I'm happy to come do it, but there's lots of folks locally, probably in the Joplin area as well as in Springfield, that can come and give you that training. So I highly encourage you to do that, whether, you do it as just a dude or as a physician in training. If you want more training as physicians, they also have specialized training for general family practitioner, or even more in-depth training for physicians that you can get through their website. I think those things are very important just to have just basic knowledge of signs to look for if you're concerned, so that you can ask someone. But one important thing to know is that you are not going to cause someone to become suicidal if you ask them if they're thinking about hurting themselves. That's just going to show that you care and that you want to make sure they're safe and get them some help.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a really good thing to be aware of. I know that when I started my psych rotation, it felt kind of weird to ask patients, have you had any suicidal thoughts? Are you thinking about harming yourself? And then after a few weeks, I was like, well, this is routine. Of course I'm going to ask everybody. And they, I never had any pain. If I did ask them that question, they would say, no, but should I be thinking about killing myself? No, they do just appreciate that somebody's asking them about, what thoughts are going through their head, how they're feeling about themselves. In my experience, I haven't had anybody that it seemed like to spark that inspiration in them and ask them that.
Right. Yeah, that just doesn't happen. And I think it's important to be able to generalize those skills to, what if I'm worried about my friend? What if I'm worried about my cousin? Somehow it seems a whole lot easier when we're doing it on a professional level than if we're worried about, someone close to us. And we, to be able to practice doing that and understanding how that changes when we're talking to our friends, because it does. It is not the same.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. I mean, if what you're telling me is that physician suicide rate is the second highest, suicide rate of any profession, it sounds like that would definitely be a conversation that I might have to have at some point in the future, especially after all these years of physician burnout rate getting so high, especially after COVID. I mean, I think anybody that's lived on this planet knows that physician burnout rate has gone up since COVID happened. So it's something that everybody should be aware of, not just medical students, not just healthcare professionals, but being able to talk to somebody about how they're feeling and making sure that, they're not thinking about hurting themselves is, I think, a skill everybody should have. So that's great that there are these programs that offer the training to do that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, Amy, thank you so much for chatting with us today. You have given us so much wonderful information about how to maintain mental health in med school as a student, but also as just every human should, and also as a doctor.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been fun to get to chat. Take care.
You too.
Some notes before we go. We wanted to announce the winner of our giveaway. Drum roll, please. Congratulations to Abby Reese, third-year student at ATSU-KCOM. We'll be in touch to get you that $100 FIGS gift card. Thanks so much to everyone that entered and shared episodes. Additionally, we're going to include the different resources that Amy and Zenobia discussed in our show notes. So there'll be a link to the physician support line, and that number, 888-409-0141. We'll also link to the QPR training, that's Question, Persuade, Refer training, some information about box breathing, and then also a link to the Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation, which is a foundation that was built to support the mental health of physicians at various levels. Remember to take care of yourself. Eat well, take good naps, move your body as your body allows you to, and reach out when you need support. You are not alone.